Sydney Harbour Bridge in Port Jackson, with the showers and comforts of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia in Rushcutters Bay off to starboard. Having cleared the intense and efficient customs and immigration procedures, I took the fast, modern local train service into the city centre. Sydney is a surprise. On the far side of the globe, surrounded by tiny, often third world countries, it's as high-rise and modern as any major city in the USA or Europe. What are most surprising are the skyscrapers in a country where 80% of the land is undeveloped. And Sydney is a city to fall in love with. It works for pedestrians with excellent public transport systems, and the old-ish and the new sit happily side by side. Even the shopping malls in the centre of town have character and charm, and are frequented by office workers and shoppers looking for a social haven, as well as all the international stores. The monorails encircle the inner part of the city, connecting business sector with the important Darling Harbour ferry terminal that joins Sydney to its dormitory suburbs. Bondi Beach is half an hour on the train out of the centre, and is surprisingly small for the main beach of such a large city. It has everything that is beach Australian. From surfboat crews practising how to get aboard, not too easily it would appear. The inevitable joggers are not interested in the surfboat crew practising how to rescue those in trouble in the sea, or maybe practising to get a part in Baywatch. The surfers and boats ride the gentle Pacific waves into the beautiful beach, and all is well in this charming, out-of-the-way corner of the world. Surfing may have been created in Hawaii, but it's the national pastime of City Australia. Bondi is the perfect playground after a day in the city, and at night there's King's Cross. This suburb with clubs, pubs, strip joints and bars, discos, classy restaurants and backpacker hostels all side by side, and teeming with locals and visitors. A somewhat disreputable air of decadence and indulgence. If you can't find it in King's Cross, then you're too old, too tired, or simply not up to it. The indigenous population busks, or maybe simply play their traditional music on the harbour side, and the statues give small tokens in return for money. Circular Quay is the main ferry terminal. From here the boats leave for all parts of Sydney Harbour. The routes vary from 2 to 3 or 8 to 10 stops, and it can take up to 3/4 of an hour to get home from the city by boat, frequently still faster than taking the car over the bridge. The first European settlement was here in this area known as the Rocks. The charming colonial buildings with little streets and alleys are all that remain. Sydney in the rain and cold of winter was a bit much for Bambola and me, despite the arcades and my wet weather gear. I decided to head north towards the Great Barrier Reef and the sun. We made the 600-mile passage past Brisbane to where it's a lot warmer. I anchored with 5 other boats in the charming lagoon of the atoll called Lady Musgrave Island. That night it really started to blow. With 60 metres of chain out in shallow waters, Bambola held firm to her anchor, but dawn saw 2 of the other boats in serious trouble, Vanhi and Moonfleet. Despite the protection of the coral reef, significant waves came into the lagoon. With my SSB radio, I called the Australian Coast Guard, and eventually a helicopter was dispatched to try to rescue the crews of the grounded yachts before they came off the reef into deep water and sank. The rescue diver jumps from the helicopter into the sea beside Vanhi. The problem for the helicopter rescue diver was that only a few feet of water covered the razor-sharp coral. Very deep water is on each side of the reef and between the boat and the island. Moonfleet, in trouble, was starting to move across the reef again as her anchor dragged. The helicopter, having picked up the son of the owner of Varney, flies him to shore on the end of the deposits him on the beach, and goes back to rescue Colin, still waiting in Varney, with waves breaking over the boat. Colin, in fact, was able to climb out of Varney onto the coral, and he walked to the diver in order to get lifted ashore. At this stage, the pilot reported he was operating Beaufort 11, so it was fairly challenging. Because it was low water, the waves coming over the reef were now a lot smaller. One of the problems for the pilot was finding deep enough water for the rescue diver so he didn't hurt himself on the very, very sharp coral. The helicopter carried Colin ashore whilst the crew of the Ketch Moonfleet were becoming very concerned. The helicopter had flown some 60 miles from Gladstone and had fuel limits, although getting back was to be all downwind. The big square structure on the right of the helicopter is the landing stage for tourist boats to Lady Musgrave. It has 4 steel girders cemented into the coral to make a fixed platform. The helicopter made the fleet in order to get the 3 crew ashore. I think the helicopter rescue diver must have been exhausted after dropping into the shallow coral sea some 5 times in order to execute the rescue of both crews. The last of the crew of Moonfleet jumps into the water. The rescue diver takes the plunge for the last time, and the crew member is deposited on the beach. The helicopter headed back for Gladstone. I settled down to wait 2 days for the weather to moderate. The glass fibre ketch Moonfleet had moved across the reef and was breaking up on the coral on the southern side of the island. Varney had drifted some 60 miles west to end up high and dry ashore on the beach of Curtis Island. I picked up Colin in Gladstone and sailed him round to her. Varney was virtually unharmed, even the rudder was okay. Says something for steel boats, and a very happy sailor. From there, Bambola and I sailed north to the Whitsunday Islands at the bottom of the Great Barrier Reef, and easy sailing. After a climb up the rocks, Aboriginal Fisherman's Cave, Hook Island was visited when Europeans came to Australia. This site has been preserved and well presented by the Australian Cultural Department. The interesting wall paintings are mainly of turtles, I was told. These waters. People lived here permanently. The fishermen let as a base for a while. Land. From the Whitsundays I headed for Bowen. It is a working shrimp fishing harbour, just like many in the United States. It has a character of purpose that I found very appealing. Although fishing is the mainstay of the community, The local town council have made great efforts to make the town attractive and interesting for both citizen and visitor alike. The main street at first sight is somewhat bland and reminiscent of small-town America. But when you get closer, there are murals. Not just any old paintings on walls. They all represent something special about Bowen and its history. They're beautifully done, really imaginative. The railways and the docks are an important part of Bowen's history, as well as the successful farms that flourish today. All this history preserved in these clever murals. They're so beautifully executed, it's easy to forget the scale. They're painted by several Australian mural artists, who also come back from time to time to refurbish them. That's what's happening here with this representation of the first Bowen newspaper. Somewhat larger than life, or just slightly surprising to see in the high street. I don't think any other town in Australia has such beautiful graffiti on its walls. Leaving Bowen, through the narrow channel between the sandbars on a blustery day, I headed north, following the path of Cook and Martin Flinders. The track between the Great Barrier Reef and the mainland is wide and clear all the way up to Cairns. And what a delightful city this is. It handles tourism with charm and dignity, and the excellent marina provides a base for the seaplanes which service the luxury hotels on the nearby reef islands, as well as doing pleasure flights. Large, well-equipped tourist boats do diving and snorkeling trips out to the reef, where the diving is excellent and well organised. If you want a Barrier Reef holiday, there's no doubt that Cairns is the place to go. It also has the major deep water port for the area, and large ships make their way up the river to the docks every day. Most of the hotels cater for the top end of the tourist market, and a high proportion of visitors are from Japan. The town centre has a colonial atmosphere that's been well preserved. There are several Aboriginal communities in the area, and these indigenous Australian people make visitors welcome to their townships just outside Cairns. I spent some time in Cairns and loved every moment of it. It tries hard to make visitors of all sorts welcome. There are lots of ordinary shops, cafes and restaurants for the passing sailor to while away the time in. After Cairns, the Great Barrier Reef route becomes narrower and more challenging. Cooktown is where the Endeavour ran onto the reef at night and was nearly wrecked. Captain Cook and his crew managed to get her off and ran into the difficult river entrance, covered in sandbars, to beach her and make the repairs. From where this monument and lighthouse stands on the top of the hill, Cook used to try to find, with his telescope, a way out to the open sea. Naturally, almost everything in the town is named after the great captain, and Bambola and I felt quite honoured to be following in such famous tracks. Cook thought that Australia and the reef had trapped him here forever. He couldn't go back, southwards, as the wind blows from that direction 12 day and night. There appeared to be no way through the reef to the open sea, and the further north he went, the narrower the channel became. Cook suspected that the channel would narrow to nothing and the door out would be closed forever. Morris Island is typical of the islets. In the olden days, there were so many ships wrecked on the reefs that the British Admiralty left goats on many of the islands and planted coconut trees for the shipwrecked mariners. The stick-type sisal trees were used by shipwrecked mariners to knock the coconuts down with. Despite the constant southerly trade winds, the islets have an unspoilt charm, and it's possible to day sail from island to island northwards. The channel is marked, but it's not for the unwary. This tanker ran up onto the reef the day after passing us, and a British Royal Navy frigate hit a rock whilst doing a helicopter transfer the following week. The islets also have inhabitants that do not welcome swimmers. Crocodiles and alligators are all around, on the beaches and beside the anchorages. They are mean and hungry and make swimming or diving in the more remote parts unwise, to say the least. The bouncy roos and the wallabies are much more frightened of us and tend to bounce off after a quick look. Darwin Marina, another milestone. Bambola lies happily in her slip, and it's a meeting place for blue water cruisers from all over the Pacific. It encourages you to pass through the Torres Straits when you're heading for the Indian Ocean, and Darwin is the perfect Australian last port of call. It's a thriving modern town with all the facilities for yachts heading towards Indonesia or South Africa. During World War II, it was attacked 64 times by the Japanese, killing over 200 people. Then the town was destroyed by Cyclone Tracy on Christmas 1974. Of the 11,000 odd houses, only 400 remained more or less intact after Tracy passed. Darwin has been totally rebuilt. It's a cool and pleasant tropical town with shady squares and pedestrian areas. It has a surprising cultural life, with the local symphony orchestra giving open-air concerts from barges moored in the marina each year. Quite a send-off for my voyage to Indonesia, with a first stop at West Timor, almost 500 miles of warm tropical waters. No coral reefs or alligators, just dolphins playing around Bambola's bows. Very light, almost non-existent winds mean lots of motor, average speed of just over 4 knots. And what a cultural change at the end of it. Reminiscent of craft in the Caribbean, and a safe anchorage just off the town. People fishing from dugout canoes with outriggers. And a beach that has been used for thousands of years for small boats to land on. Longshoremen, retired fishermen, living in little shacks made of driftwood. The local passenger ferry service with that of Sydney Harbour, but it has a charm of its own. The town is bustling with friendly minibus conductors, or you can rent the back seat of a motorbike and be driven to meet customs and immigration. Indonesia and Timor manufacture a lot of our branded goods because labour is so cheap. If you buy, you get some real bargains. The street stalls are everywhere, offering a wide range of goods. Cigarettes are sold by the pack or individually, And the vendors don't own the stalls. A Mr. Big in this town allows locals to sell from his stalls on a commission-only basis. And that's why they try so hard to make sales. Well, that's the theory anyway. Fast food comes on foot with, and the shops stock all the things in the. I just love the colour and excitement, easy way of life. This furniture would pay for the items at home. Outside the town, things are more traditional, simpler, quieter. This is a rural village where country folk live, and it appears to be colourful, simple and charming. The laundry is done by hand in the village pond, and the people appear happy. The music in the local market is more subdued than the pop of the town. And the ubiquitous blue sheets keep the sun off the products and shoppers alike, whilst allowing the breeze to flow through. The market is extensive and sells everything from radios to fruit, vegetables to Coca-Cola. The people of Timor are charming, friendly and eager to please visitors. We must seem very strange with our pale skin and our cameras. A little further on, this tribe of monkeys have got used to living with tourists and occasionally being fed by them. They are delightful creatures living in freedom, but sometimes approach human visitors in return for a peanut or two. The babies are fabulous to watch, and the music of young and old alike is very tactile. They appear to have a community spirit that's special, and to live in just one big extended family. So nice to watch them enjoying freedom, rather than in cages or behind bars. On the nearby beach is a boatyard, constructing the long boats out of traditional materials, without resorting to screws or other metal fittings. The planks are moulded into shape by the same means that was used 1,000 years ago. Even if the final finish is achieved by the use of some power tools, the basic tools and skills have existed since time immemorial. These guys are not chopping firewood, but on the dowel assembly line. I do wonder how the wooden dowels that are used to fasten the planks were made before this device was created. What beautiful boats they end up being. So much more attractive than our rigid dinghies or rubber inflatables. Sometimes I wonder if we've really got it so right.